Lacey Everett here with Minds in Motion. Truly care about your success. So I would love to hear your comments and thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to the Minds in Motion YouTube channel so I can make more of these wonderful videos for you. And it's really easy to subscribe. You just click a button and you're done, and it's free. I appreciate all of you who've given your feedback, and it's really helped me to make these videos more personalized for you. Today's guest is Dr. Amin, who is a cardiologist. Dr. Amin is a humble, genuine, kind, knowledgeable person who's going to give advice for those in med school and those who are practitioners now, who are doctors now. He's a great role model to show what an excellent doctor looks like. Dr. Amin has been in practice for 21 years now. I'm going to explain the training that he has been through, which is incredible, and he's had a lot of special unique trainings that he's gone through, clear diagnosis, and he's gone to volunteer and what that experience was like for him, as well as his day-to-day routine working at a hospital and at a clinic as a cardiologist. Dr. Amin is going to talk about energy drinks and what they do to our bodies and our heart and build our awareness around that. He's also going to talk about his career and his day-to-day routine and what it looks like for him, for those of you who are aspiring doctors. And he's going to talk about the life lessons that he's learned within his career and his education and special trainings, and he's going to give that knowledge to us. And we talk about culture, we talk about diversity, we talk about different diagnoses. We also have a discussion about hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and he's going to define that for us and talk about what it entails, what to watch out for. I have really been looking forward to this discussion with Dr. Amin and to post this for you all to gain such wonderful knowledge from.
Disclosure: this episode does not take the place of a real doctor's visit. If you are enduring any problems, please consult with your doctor.
So let's go meet Dr. Amin.
Hi.
I'm so grateful that you can talk to us today. I love your heart picture in the background.
Well, it's been, I guess, since I was 40, because my staff had given it to me at that time.
It's very telling for what you do as a cardiologist. I love that. And so I thought we could start with talking about your career. And it's an impeccable career and what you do. And so I thought we could start talking about that and your day-to-day life.
Okay. Well, when I decided my career was back in my undergraduate days, that was at University of Illinois in Chicago, and then moved on to my training at medical school at Street School of Medicine in Chicago, and that's at Loyola University. And then it's a long journey, but yet it's a very rewarding and a fun journey. So after Stritch, I went on to work for my residency, which is a general medicine residency. That's about 3 to 4 years. And I finished that in 1995. And then from there, I did a year of emergency room and trauma, and then moved out here to California to get more specific training in cardiology at Loma Linda.
Wow, what a journey. And all of that hard work. And like you said it's so rewarding and it's worth it. Would you say worth all that hard work? For sure.
It definitely is, because today, after 21 years of finishing training at Loyola, at Loma Linda, eventually, the journey kind of for the last 21 years has been very, very rewarding, because I get to work with a lot of people from all levels, including from beginning nurses to special procedure teams, as well as intensive care unit nurses, ER nurses. And then, of course, along the way, lots of colleagues from from just general doctors all the way up to neurosurgeons and orthopedic surgeons as well. So it's a very diverse career.
Yeah, a huge variety, which I'm sure just expands your knowledge even more because you're constantly with a variety of people. And I'm curious too, what your day-to-day life is like in your career as a cardiologist.
Well, day-to-day life in a cardiologist is almost always unpredictable because whereas a regular doctor can set hours of work, cardiology problems occur randomly. And so you have to be available on an immediate need basis. So if I get a call from an emergency room, I can't say, okay, well, I'll come by and see the patient tomorrow or see the person tomorrow, because cardiology usually requires action within a few minutes to, within 30 minutes or so.
Yes, you have to be ready to go and on.
And that's why it requires a lot of training to build up one confidence and then kind of recognize what's wrong and how to deal with something if someone or something has gone wrong with the person or the patient.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And what helps you deal with that? What helps you prepare?
If anything, it's both knowledge and experience. I can say that you are always learning something new. So you have to keep your mind open, and you always have to put some experiences together, and when you work with different people, it's always something new and different.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Always new, something new every day when you go in, which I think adds excitement to your work. And also the fact of it feeling really rewarding because you're genuinely helping these people so often. So, Dr. Amin, I know you are so humble, so I have to drill these things out of you. You have so much special training in your education and experience in the field prior and such. So I'm curious if you can talk about that. And I know you volunteered on an island and you took 2 med students with you. Can you talk about that experience?
So this was a very interesting, a month away where I had to take 2 medical students. It was not had to. I did take away 2 medical students from their role from learning to go with me to learn more on a remote place. It was an island of St. Lucia. There's a hospital there on the south side of the island where it's essentially run by volunteer nurses and doctors completely. And they have very limited resources. Whereas here in the United States, we can get anything and everything we want in healthcare. On the island, there was basic things just like blood pressure, your vitals check, monitoring somebody's fever, using a stethoscope and perhaps an X-ray to make certain diagnoses that you could help treat a person with. Interesting things on the island is that the people were so poor, they would just pay us and whatever they grew on the farm. I mean, pineapples, bananas, whatever they grew. And that would be like the food that the hospital ran on. But then as a return, we would provide care to the people, which was amazing, I thought. And I also got to see and work with doctors from all over the world. I mean, I worked with an orthopedic surgeon from Canada, and I worked with 2 doctors from England. So it was a great place where all of us could put our thoughts together and work as a team without a lot of equipment. Yeah, and just take care of the persons.
Yeah, it sounded like you had to be really creative and work collectively and work with what you had. And also for those students who went with you, I mean, talk about an education in itself, just traveling to somewhere like this that's very different than what we have in the US.
And it was great learning for me to teach somebody without all the tools. And that was another learning experience in itself because
having to be very creative for sure. Wow, what an experience. And it reminds me, I went to Peru to work with some of the doctors there, and it's very similar in the sense that they would all line up and they would travel with bags over their shoulders and, making all the physical therapists just cringe, like, oh my gosh, this is so bad for your back. And that's a whole other story, but also filled with corn or their children. They would fill these bags and they'd walk down hills to these facilities that we would be at to get care. And it was a similar experience of a just different culture and how they live and how they prioritize their health and whatnot. And
on a fun level, it was kind of interesting where one of the bags that we packed was just food that we needed for ourselves, and the other bag was for our clothes. So when we went on this journey,
that's it. Just the food and your clothes. You're good. You'll figure everything out when you get there.
Exactly. And then you just had to play with whatever you had. And it was not necessarily play, but you had to work with whatever you had.
Yes, work with what you have, which builds resiliency. I'm sure there was a lot of life lessons that came out of that experience alone, having to build resiliency, be creative, work collectively in an environment that you're not used to. Wow.
You just don't have all the tools in those places. And
exactly.
That's what majority of the world is too, by the way. But here in the United States, we do have a luxury to a certain extent.
We're very privileged, 100% here in the US. Yeah. And thank you for bringing that awareness too. It's something not a lot of people in the US think about. And also, lastly, so your nuclear training, can you talk about that?
So all of the fields in medicine have some sort of specialty type of work where you learn a different type of knowledge. And for me, when I was doing my work at Loma Linda here, not Marietta, but Loma Linda, I wanted to learn what nuclear training was so that I could image somebody's heart. The technology's been there for a long, long time, but it requires a special skill. So I had for several months gone to about a month and a half at UCLA and then another month at Long Beach. And then to get my special training in nuclear, because that requires special credentials here in the United States. And after the training is done, you also need licensure for nuclear, and that I had to complete in Denver, and then bring those credentials here back to California to practice nuclear medicine.
Experience. If I were you, Dr. Amin, I would look at myself in the mirror and say, you're doing great, and just pat yourself on the back, because this is so much that you've done to learn for other people, so other people can be healthy and other people can thrive. It's very admirable.
That's what I always wanted to do. As I explained, Lacey, in the beginning, all I wanted to do is to help others. Yeah. That's what medicine should be.
Yes, thank you for that. I hope everyone who's going to be a doctor is listening to that specific part. Yes.
I hope so too.
Yes. Okay.
I usually start my day really early, like 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning latest to start work, and then continue on through working at the hospitals first, because I always want to make sure that the patients in the hospital are doing fine. And then I start my clinic. So clinic usually is about 20 patients or so throughout the course of the day. And then I'll come back to the hospital to kind of wrap up stuff that wasn't finished in the morning, or if something new winds up. And then finally is the time to go home and do some resting.
Yes, resting, so then you can be your best doctor self the next day. That's amazing. And it sounds like a really jam-packed day with a lot of really important things. And it sounds like your career and your education leading up to that and your experience leading up to that has helped serve you so well. So I really am so honored to speak with you, Dr. Amin.
I'm happy to be here for you. And
I'm so grateful. And I wanted to ask about energy drinks. You are so knowledgeable about that. And I know it's something that a lot of our, it's really prevalent in society. Energy drinks are everywhere. And so I'm curious what that does to the heart, and if you can bring awareness to others who watch this on that aspect.
Well, energy drinks are kind of an initial reward. Like you feel like, okay, great, I feel great. But then there's this period where your body starts feeling tired, and then from a medical side, you can have problems with the energy drinks like cardiac arrhythmias, irregular heartbeat, pounding of the heart constantly in a random fashion. And some people are very, very sensitive to energy drinks. So they get acceleration of the heart rate, and then they pass out sometimes. Although that's rare, it can happen. Energy drinks are great for like short term. Yes, they're great. They're exciting. They make me feel rev up. But then the long term, over time effects of energy drinks are not so good.
Mm-hmm. And it makes sense, because it sounds like putting those chemicals in your body that are not good for us over time, that's going to take a toll on us. And it sounds like it's kind of like a quick fix that a lot of people don't really understand, that, oh, hey, this might make me feel really great in the moment, but over time, it's detrimental to my body and my health.
Well, even just drinking a few cups of coffee per day might create a problem for some people, because they're just not tolerating the caffeine. But yet they want to continue to drink the coffee, and that actually can cause problems. But then other drinks like sports drinks, they give us that high, but then shortly afterwards, you do feel that low. And this up and down roller coaster is just not good for your body in general.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for bringing awareness to that. I really appreciate that. It's a hot topic right now, and it's really needed to hear your knowledge and your words of wisdom on that, for sure.
It's concerning because sometimes advertisement or even just peer issues will cause somebody to say, okay, I'm going to drink the same drink as somebody else. In competitive sports, like sometimes Olympic sports, people use energy drinks, and that can be great for that sport at that time. But then over the years, it may not necessarily hold a good problem or a good situation for the heart.
Exactly. And I don't believe media helps that at all. Like you mentioned, oh, they see this celebrity drinking this and this celebrity drinking that, so I'm going to go drink it, and I'm going to have the same effects that I saw on that commercial. But really, it's about being aware that, hey, maybe not everything we see on the media is correct, and challenging, and building literacy within ourselves, and just kind of noticing things and challenging things, then we don't actually have to act on them.
No, that's true. I've seen that happen so often, especially as, in the younger years of somebody may not seem that bad, but then as people get a little bit older, or when they are done with their sports, they'll still have problems that might have persisted from the time that they were using the energy drinks.
Yeah, so it can have lasting effects. Really.
Oh, yeah. Over time, this is something that, as the thought comes around, you say, okay, fine, it's great for now. It's great for now. Let me use it because I feel really great with it. But then over time, it may actually not be to an advantage.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So thank you for building our knowledge and helping our bodies. So now hopefully the viewers will stop using energy drinks, or be more aware of what they're putting and how the effects will go.
Yeah, as long as there's moderation is the greatest word. Some things are definitely harmful that we need to eliminate completely, but then a little bit of moderation in everything is probably okay. But energy drinks, I know for sure, are not going to be the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Yes, moderation is key. Everything in moderation. Yes. Also, Dr. Amin, I really wanted to talk about hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, because it's something that I hear a lot about, and there's a lot of questions about. And so I thought you could first define it for us, for the layperson who does not know what the word means. It's a big word, and just what you see and how it affects the body.
Well, see, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is essentially just a thickening of the muscle of the heart. It's not something that you're doing in yourself to physically cause it, although certain things like blood pressure can cause it. But the kind that I'm talking about is really where cardiomyopathy is really a change. That's what myopathy means. And cardio, of course, means heart. So a change in the heart, and hyper means to thicken. So the change that's occurring is that the walls of the heart are becoming thicker. And the interesting thing about hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or muscle thickening, is that it's genetic. And it's sort of hard because you never know, if you have it per se, unless you know for sure that somebody in the family has it. And then you would go through testing to make sure that you don't have it. The other thing about hypertrophic cardiomyopathy that's of concern is that it can cause some significant problems. One of them is where you have syncope, or where you pass out suddenly doing this sport. So let's say you're playing aggressive basketball, and then all of a sudden you suddenly collapse on the court. So, and then you think about, okay, gee, what happened? What happened? Was it because I had just not drunk enough fluids that day, or was there something wrong? And often enough, we need to check that. It is very rare, but this is one of the concerns we have in athletics that are competitive sports as well. So there was this study that was kind of done, or investigation research that was done. How often should you check if somebody has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy? Do we need to check it on everybody who is going to play sports that is competitive? Or do we just check it when there's something wrong and that we know about the fact that somebody in the family has the problem? Or do we even just check it because somebody had the event and then now we want to be really, really cautious? So with that, there's kind of three words, there's screening, diagnosis, and therapy in medicine. Screening means that you want to find out if some problem exists before you even know the person has it. And the other is diagnosis. Once you find out what is wrong in somebody, you want to prove that something is wrong. And therapy means that you're going to take action to prevent problems in the future. Screening, though, there's this controversy right now in the United States where should we screen everybody for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy? Should we check every single professional athlete or somebody who's going to play aggressive sports in high school, from like aggressive basketball or even football? These sports are very, very dynamic sports that involve a lot of load to the heart on a continuous basis. And so should I really be screening every single high school player? Should I be screening every athlete that wants to think about playing competitive sports? And this is a very, very tough controversy. There's a couple of countries in the world that check everybody in competitive sport, like Italy and Israel are two countries that screen everybody who's going to play. But today here in the United States, we're not doing that. And the controversy is, well, how am I going to screen in the first place? And even if I find something wrong, what am I going to do? There's a lot of different ways to check for it. Some of the things that you can do is like an EKG or an echocardiogram. But I think the basic things that we need to do is a very nice physical exam for somebody who is playing competitive sports at a high level. That means just making sure your doctor has checked it out to make sure that there's no passing out, or when they listen to somebody's heart, they're not hearing a loud sound or a snapping sound. In cardiology, we call these murmurs, which is what I hear with a stethoscope. So if somebody has an unexplained murmur, that's something that definitely needs to be investigated. And as I said in the beginning, this is genetic. So if I've got a family member who has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, then everybody should be checked, because genetic problems can be either recessive or dominant. Hypertrophic is dominant. So that means that even if one parent of mine has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, there's a 50% chance that I will probably have the gene for it as well. So it's pretty interesting how the genetics play a role. Interesting thing about hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is that it has something called variable penetrance. So what that means is that if you have the gene for it, as we define in genetics, that doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily have the clinical problem that's going to make relevance. So, but yet you are still going to pass the gene on to your children because it is genetically dominant, and your children are going to have a 50% chance. So just because my father, for example, has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and then I get it as a gene, 50% chance, then it doesn't mean that I may have actual expression of the gene, meaning I may not necessarily even see hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, but then there's still that 50% chance that my children might have the problem of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy.
Mm-hmm. And thank you so much for broadening our knowledge on this stuff. It's also interesting that because it's genetic based, would you say it's extra important to seek out doctors and when you're getting physicals, because we don't get EKGs in our physicals in the US. So would you say it's extra important to seek that out just so you can have an understanding and know what you might have, especially if you're an athlete?
That's one of the controversies that's going on. As I said, Italy tests everybody. In the United States, there's a problem with the testing too, because what happens if the test is wrong? So let's say I test Jim, for example. I'm just going to use a name. And Jim is going to be a great basketball player. Then when I do the test, it comes out, okay, well, he can't play basketball because the test is showing that he might have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Mm-hmm. But that's not true always, because the test might be wrong. So let's say somebody is labeled with the problem, but they don't have the problem at all. Did I just prevent the person from playing sports? And that's the problem we don't have a solid data on to make that type of a decision here in the United States. And there's this big controversy in Europe. So I think over the next decade, we might know as far as which way to go. But it's really, really hard to say that, okay, Jim's going to have to be tested, or what I test in Jim is definitely going to be a problem for him.
Exactly. It's a huge controversy. So for the future researchers that are watching this, note this, and maybe they can start researching this more, because it's a big deal.
It is a big deal, but I wouldn't panic on it, because it's even though it's a big deal, the prevalence, meaning the likelihood of somebody having it, is so low that I think just a simple physical examination, talking to your doctor, those are important things. We're actually even at high school making sure that your coach is aware of some problem that you're having, just not to ignore it. Oh, I want to play, so I'm going to ignore the problem. That's just not the right thing to do.
I know. And it's hard too when you're an athlete, because especially when you're young, it sort of becomes your identity, and you can work towards a healthier way of it not becoming just your identity as just your athlete, but that's another topic. But it seems like the end of the world, when you're injured or you're having a medical complication and you can't play your sport. And so it's likely for a lot of athletes to just keep playing on that broken ankle, or keep playing on that, murmuring heart, or whatever it is.
And it's kind of a sad feeling too, because let's say, and Jim's a really good player and he wants to play really hard and really hard. And I just told him that he can't play for all the months that he might have, or even a few years or years that he might have played the sport. One of the things is that, why do I have to stop now? Is it something I did wrong? And that creates a little bit of grief. That's really like, okay, I was doing this all my life. Why do I have to stop now? It creates in high school, it always creates a worry on mom and dad, but then there's no real answer. And it sometimes creates guilt on mom and dad, like, gee, did I give this gene to my son or my daughter?
Mm-hmm. That's why I feel like in those moments when the athlete is taken out of their sport because of something like a broken ankle or whatever it is, that's why I think it's so important to understand that the sport is something you do. It's not who you are. You can
it's not who you are. Exactly.
Yes.
It's not reflective of who you are. It's something you're doing. Absolutely. And it's encouraged that you do, because competition and sports bring out the best in all of us.
Yeah, it's a great thing. It's amazing. And it's healthy for us. And you build relationships and friendships and discipline and all of these wonderful traits that you can take for the rest of your life. And understanding that, okay, for this game, I'm going to play basketball and I'm going to be a basketball player. And then after that, I'm going to go home and be Jim or whatever your name is and be myself.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that would help with the time that they do get injured, because it's very common, with athletes to get injured, and then they can understand, okay, I'm injured. Basketball isn't who I am, so I can process this injury a lot better.
And that's really the frustration behind it, because you've worked so hard. I've worked so hard. The other thing about competitive sports is that you're not necessarily playing for yourself, but you're playing for a team, or you're playing to win. And that's, So one of the problems with competitive sports, is really a problem, is that it's hard for us to know when to stop. So some people will say, well, that's wrong. I think you should always keep active. I think you should always keep working and stay physically active. Those are important things. But when you're playing a competitive sport, you have to keep in mind my goal is, of course, to win, right? That's the goal. And I'm going to do everything I can to be the best player. That's what winning is. Winning and of course, not intimidating when somebody loses or the loser. But still, that's a separate issue. But you have that goal to win. You are going to play so hard to your best that you're going to forget what the heart has to do, which is also do its hard work and be the best. And perhaps just the heart doesn't have the capability to do that. And that's when you get into problems like passing out or other problems associated with any cardiac problems, especially hypertrophic cardiomyopathy.
Yes, thank you for this. And that it makes sense the way you put it. And I'm also really curious too, advice that you have for medical professionals. And Dr. Amin, I say this so sincerely, you are an impeccable role model for the medical field and for professionals training to become doctors, cardiologists. You spend so much time just with the patients themselves and really getting to know them as people. And I know that's another controversy. That's another, research topic in itself, is that aspect of being a doctor and just not going in and out of the rooms. You take so much time with them, and it shows that there's so much extra healing in that itself. So I'm curious if you can talk about that.
Well, the thing with medicine today is that there's a lot of pressure to see, okay, I have to finish this, I have to finish this. And, I've got 30 or 40 patients to see, so I'm going to just, move on, and not really spend to get to know a person. And that's not the way I was taught or trained, because that's perhaps a little bit in my personality and character. But I almost always want to know, okay, so what did this person that I'm seeing today, what do they like to do at home, and what's their family like? Because these are things that help relax a person during the actual visit. So their mind is a little bit focused not on just medicine or something that's, quote, wrong with me, but more, okay, I know my doctor, so that, I know Dr. Amin, so they can feel free to ask me questions. And at the same token, to know them as a person, including their occupations, because no occupation is without hard work. So it's you should respect everybody at whatever from simple person who's working at a machine shop to just maybe perhaps somebody who was a big time attorney and under pressure to do a lot of things. Or another example would be like an airline pilot or somebody who has high levels of jobs, but yet perhaps just knowing them as a person, that's what I like to do.
Nice. And it shows that it helps them with their mind and their body, and just in the trust that they have in you, who's, really giving them the prescriptions or the surgeries and such. So it sounds like that only helps.
It builds a confidence type relationship that perhaps is not the first day I see them, but perhaps continuing on for years, that I get to know them as not only the person, their families, as well as they get to know mine. And they get to know me as somebody who was comfortable to talk to and comfortable to talk about.
You're such a great role model, to say the least. It's nice to hear this. And I'm curious too, really quick, what got you into cardiology? What did you love about the heart?
Well, cardiology has been a passion of mine since, I guess, physiology in college. I love the combination of how basic sciences like physics play a role in a human life or any life. And since cardiology and physiology go hand in hand, there's a lot of physiology that has to be used in cardiology. I think that was one of my most reflective points, I guess is the right way to say that I'm going to do cardiology. You have a lot of career branches in medicine, but I particularly like cardiology, although then I realize it's a long training process. Finishing med school in 91 to finishing training in 99, it's an 8-year journey, even after medical school. But it's a fun journey too. It's not like you're boring, just opening up a book and then reading. You're getting to know people and you're getting to interact with different people. You're forming relationships that will probably last, long time. Teaching student relationships as well as learning in terms of a student or a professor teaching me.
Absolutely. I'm always preaching education. I think we are forever learners. I'm perfectly fine with being 100 and still learning things about my field, and the importance of going to college. And like you said, building those relationships. And we talked about this earlier. Also, the fact that grad school is, in a weird roundabout way, almost easier than undergrad, because it's something that you really want to do. Therefore, you retain the information better. You're actually more willing to read the books. And
that's true. Even though you have a lot more books to read, at least you're focusing on what you like to read.
Yes.
The nice thing about graduate school or medical school, it's not a lot of learning harder things, but it's learning a lot of things. And sometimes people find, okay, my gosh, I'm studying forever. But really what you're doing is just taking knowledge that you have and kind of putting it on the right shelf so that you can pull it out when you need it.
Exactly. That's a great way to look at it. So if anyone is struggling with, school, which is common, they can think that way. That mindset would really help. It's just stacking the files in my brain of knowledge that I can pull from later in life with my patients that I have and whatnot.
And if it's not on my shelf, then at least I know which place to go to find it, I guess, too. So yeah, you have to, there's always going to be something that you're not going to know. But really that's the fun thing, which is discovery in graduate school, is that you start learning about things that you don't know as well as what you'd like to know.
Exactly. Yes. And that's why we go to school. We want to learn more.
That's correct. I mean, school, you're never going to stop learning, whether you're in school or not in school. That learning process should continue to move on. And that's what keeps us being good people.
Yes, I love that mindset, truly. Thank you so much, Dr. Amin, for these words of wisdom. It's amazing, and I feel honored to talk to you about this.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, I am wishing you the best of luck with your future endeavors and all of your patients. I'm sending you so much positive energy for your workday tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Bye.